Hello and welcome to TF1, a show where I get to share my passion of motorsport and Formula One specifically with you, the poor listeners who tried to type in YG2 in the search bar but accidentally typed too far to the left. Well, you're here now, so come along and let's discuss the Bahrain Grand Prix. And oh my gosh, what a fun race that was to watch. I mean, the battles, the overtakes, the drama, the heartbreak, and an honorable mention to the most synchronized retirement I've ever seen, with both Renault cars stopping in perfect sync, seconds from each other in the same corner. I mean, Cyril must be so proud. But more about that a bit later. So I think let's immediately get cracking with the analysis of the weekend overall. And I think let's just do a quick recap of qualifying, where Ferrari showed that they actually do have the pace to compete with Mercedes this year, and that is going to be a battle royale, I think, over the whole season, and I'm here for it. I'm relishing it, and I think it's going to be incredible. Ferrari was out and out the fastest over all of the practice sessions and definitely had the pace advantage over Mercedes during qualifying, and in the same breath, Leclerc was even 0.3 up on Vettel throughout the whole weekend as well. So that was just really a dominating display from Leclerc and obviously his team. And I think they really had Mercedes worried after the first day, where Mercedes was basically a second behind. And I think we can also commend Mercedes for really buckling down and sort of gaining back a lot of that time, where Hamilton ended up being about 0.3 behind Leclerc after Q3 in the final stage of qualifying. So that was actually quite impressive from Mercedes and from Hamilton to dig themselves out of quite a sizable hole early on. I think another thing to just mention was Red Bull's overall lack of performance. I think there was a big hoo-ha about the Honda engine, and Red Bull supporters were getting all emotional and teary-eyed about this amazing new engine that they have at their disposal. But to be honest, Max Verstappen and the Red Bull team just didn't show up at all, and was quite a disappointing showing from them when measured against the other two big teams. Okay, and I think that's sort of the main highlights from qualifying. I don't think there was anything else super noteworthy. I think you can maybe also mention McLaren really had a very good and promising session and showed good turn of speed in qualifying. And I think Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris did a very good job, with, I think, an honorable mention to Carlos Sainz for putting that car in 6th place, which is a very impressive feat. And as I've mentioned before, and I think in my previous episode, Carlos Sainz is definitely one to watch. So I'll be very intrigued to see how he does over the rest of the year. Okay, so let's talk about this super dramatic and interesting race that we just saw. And I think obviously the logical place to start is just to talk about poor Charles Leclerc, who was in the lead of the race, and then, in just the most cruel way, his win got taken away. With his engine recovery system failing, which basically meant he was down, I think, 140 brake horsepower or something like that. It was so painful to watch, and just to see him being that helpless with cars overtaking him like that was really hard to watch. And I do think that he is definitely he has announced himself as a very big threat for the championship this year and many championships in the future, because I feel has the whole package in terms of ability, in terms of level-headedness, in terms of speed. I mean, he was 0.3 up on Vettel the whole weekend, and Vettel couldn't find the time. So, I mean, what an achievement from him there. And even the way he handled the disappointments. I mean, the maturity in which he went out there and still spoke good things about the team and really tried to find the positives in the weekend, I thought was really commendable, and I was very impressed with him. And to be honest, I've never been more grateful for a safety car in my life, because he deserved at least to be on that podium, and I'm very glad he was able to be on that podium. And I can now officially, and I'm going to make it a TF1 official announcement, that I am now officially a joint Hamilton and Leclerc fan, and I will be rooting for both of them equally over the coming few races, because I feel I will appreciate a good racing driver and someone that has the talent that both of them has. And I can't wait to see how China goes for both of them. So speaking of Hamilton, I think in summary, it was a very strong weekend from him overall. It was clear from the start that Mercedes had a deficit in overall pace in their car, but I think Hamilton did what he had to do. He didn't make any mistakes. He maximized his chances in both qualifying and the race. I mean, he pulled some very, very nice overtakes over his teammate Bottas, and obviously the very interesting one over Vettel, which we'll talk about a bit more about later. Yeah, he put himself in a position to steal the race victory if something bad were to happen, and that's eventually what it turned out to be. So, I mean, good on Hamilton. He takes 25 points from this race, and I do feel he was very gracious towards Leclerc at the end by basically giving him all the credit and saying that you got lucky this time, but you take what you can get and you go on to the next race. So, Valtteri Bottas. I mean, I think Hamilton showed Bottas who's boss again this weekend. I can't really remember any occasion over the weekend where Bottas really announced himself as being any sort of meaningful challenger to Hamilton. And I just want to ask the press, I just want to ask everybody going crazy about Bottas over the past 2 weeks, where did bad Bottas go? It lasted him exactly one Australian Grand Prix and one piece of broken floor on Hamilton's car. And now it seems order has been restored and we're going to go ahead in the normal old way as was the case in 2018. Now, I challenge Valtteri Bottas to please come and prove us all wrong and come back in China and beat Hamilton's fair and square. But I don't know, I just have a feeling that he just doesn't have that little bit of extra pace that Hamilton can find even when the chips are down. But again, I'm very willing to be proven otherwise come the next few races. And I guess now we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Vettel and his front wing. And to be honest, I think Vettel needs to go and needs to take a long, hard look at himself in his mirror there in Germany or in Switzerland, wherever he stays. And he needs to realize that if he doesn't pull up his socks as soon as possible, he is going to be a number 2 driver faster than you can say Charles Leclerc was supposed to win the Bahrain Grand Prix. He is making an unacceptable amount of mistakes and silly mistakes, and he's struggling with pace, and I mean he's complaining about qualifying, and just the fact that he was 3 tenths behind his much less experienced teammate shows you that he is under pressure. And I think the mistakes that he was making during the race was also just because of the pressure that he's facing, I think, inside of his own team. And I think it must have been very depressing for him to basically see Charles Leclerc overtake him and then end up being 10 seconds up the road, just showing superior pace throughout the whole race. And then, I mean, can we just talk about the fact that he basically had a spin out of pure fear just because Hamilton was there overtaking him? I mean, they didn't touch. Hamilton wasn't near his car. Hamilton was past his car. And out of pure bewilderment, Vettel just still managed to spin up his car and in the process flat spot his tires and cause his front wing to explode. So I just think that he needs to really, really go and reassess the way he approaches the next races, because I think his stock is definitely on the decline and he needs to fix it sooner rather than later. Another interesting thing, I guess, if we could just talk about now while we're talking about Vettel and Ferrari, is there were whispers during after the Australian Grand Prix that Ferrari's lack of pace was due to them managing their engine and their engine temperatures. And I'm wondering whether this weekend, where they obviously ran it on full power, whether you can now sort of see there are some reliability concerns with the Ferrari engine in general, where we obviously saw Leclerc having the issue that he had. So I think that's something that we definitely need to track over the coming few races and see whether there is a bit of a reliability bug in the Ferrari engine, whether it's going to be something that might influence how they approach the races in the championship over the year. I think let's quickly also speak about Max Verstappen and Red Bull. I mean, Red Bull, they were nowhere during the whole race and during the whole weekend, really. I guess still ahead of the midfield, but really solidly behind the other two teams. The only sort of noteworthy incident over the weekend was, I guess, Verstappen and Sainz during the third lap of the race. But I guess, I mean, racing incident, Sainz was very unlucky. Verstappen was lucky to not get a puncture. But yeah, I mean, good points for them, I guess, but they're going to have to also go back and reassess their pace, and I think just need to calm down the enthusiasm about their new engine a bit, because obviously they're not quite there where they keep saying they are. Speaking about not being quite there where they're saying they are, Pierre Gasly really needs to put in a good performance now, because after two performances where I think now for this race he barely made it into the points and didn't make it into the points yesterday, he's going to have to step it up, because as we know, Red Bull has, basically an Olympic stadium filled with potential replacements for Gasly. I mean, Kvyat and Albon are both actually showing good performances in the Toro Rosso, so Gasly needs to start looking over his shoulder and pull up his socks just like Sebastian Vettel. I think let's quickly discuss the midfield performances. I think a special shout out to the McLaren and the McLaren drivers. I think Carlos Sainz really did an exceptional job to qualify his car in the way that he did. And I mean, to challenge Verstappen for 5th place, I think it was 5th place, after the first few laps of the race, and going for the overtake, I think was admirable. And I mean, he got unlucky with the accident and then obviously the damage that he had. And I do hope that he takes heart from just the fact that their car is showing good performance, and that he is definitely, and I still maintain this, one to look out for in the future. I think Lando Norris did a very good job. I mean, getting points, and very good points for the McLaren team. And yeah, I also think people are starting to notice him. To be honest, I haven't really seen him put in a performance or shown sort of the attributes that I would like, that I see in someone like Leclerc, for example, but I do think that he's a talented guy, and I think McLaren is extremely pleased with the car that they're developing and the type of progress that they're making. For Renault, Cyril Abiteboul must be devastated, as am I, because when Cyril is devastated, I'm devastated, because Cyril is, as I've mentioned before, one of my favorite people in the paddock. Poor Daniel Ricciardo, poor Nico Hülkenberg, they both drove very, very nice races. I think especially Hülkenberg from, I think, racing or starting 17th place, and I think being 7th on the track after just before he retired was a very, very impressive effort. And I think reinforces what I said in my previous episode, that he really, really is probably the most underrated driver on the grid, and that he has supreme racecraft and is a very good and exceptional driver. Renault, are they going to have to go and look at reliability, because they're throwing away points left, right, and center. And I do think that they have a good car and a good package, but they need to fix these small things, because they're costing themselves, and they're very, very talented drivers. Lots of points and lots of confidence. For the other teams, not really much to mention. Haas, nothing happened there. Sauber, nothing really happened there. Racing Points, I mean, Stroll is being Stroll and not really, let's say, to use his dad's terminology, providing good return on investment at the moment. But I guess let's all reserve judgment for the next few races and see if old Lance can actually justify him being in the Racing Point team. Now, before we move on to our awards section and our awards segment, I would just like to quickly mention the overtaking that we saw during the Bahrain Grand Prix, because I thought it was just super exciting, especially, I mean, the first few laps after the start, with Leclerc being overtaken, Bottas overtaking Leclerc, Hamilton overtaking Bottas, Leclerc overtaking Vettel, Hamilton overtaking Vettel. I mean, it was just action all around, up and down the field, and I really do think cars are a bit easier to follow now. I guess we'll see over the course of the year whether this remains the case, but yeah, it was just such an exciting race to see, and the overtaking was really, really nice and spectacular. And I think it's promising for future races to come. And I think it's good, a good return for the Formula One management that are really, really trying to address concerns among the fans and to make the races more and more spectacular. Okay, now let's quickly move on to my 3 awards that I've introduced 2 weeks ago, where we obviously have our first award, which is the Pastor Maldonado Award for stupidest or most dunderheaded deed over the race weekend. And I mean, I feel this one is obvious. That one goes to Sebastian Vettel for spinning up his Ferrari out of pure anxiety, flat spotting his tires, and with the vibrations being so big that it caused his wing to blow up. I've literally never seen a person's race go up in sparks like that, and Vettel, as I've mentioned before, needs to go and do some severe introspection. Now, the second award is the Lewis Hamilton #Blessed Award for Luckiest Driver, and I feel it's very appropriate that this award is going to Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes team for inheriting a win that was basically out of their reach 10 laps before the end. Good for them for putting the car in that position to be able to take advantage of that. But I think the Mercedes and Hamilton, and I think all of us can agree that they got a bit lucky there. But onwards and upwards, and I'm sure they're not complaining. And then thirdly, the Nico Hulkenberg Award for Unluckiest Driver. I feel that there are quite a few potential nominees, and I think honorable mentions go out. Honorable mentions go out to Carlos Sainz for his incident with Verstappen after his very, very promising and good performance over the weekend, and Nico Hulkenberg for basically driving up from 17th on the grid to 7th. And then retiring due to engine troubles. But I think still the obvious choice here is to just award the Nico Hulkenberg Podium Award for Unluckiest Driver to Charles Leclerc for missing out on an almost certain race win due to reliability issues. And let's just hope something like this doesn't happen again, and that Charles gets his race victory in the near future. And I'm sure he will be back even stronger in China. So overall, a Grand Prix that was incredible in both action and drama. It does, however, leave us with a few questions to ponder. Will Mercedes strike back in China? Will Vettel be able to keep his car from spontaneously ending up in its own tyre smoke? Will Leclerc bounce back and win the next race? Will the surgery to remove Christian Horner's head from Max Verstappen's behind be successful? As always, much to think about. So that's it for today. If you have any opinions or thoughts to share with me, please do so on both Twitter or Facebook, and I will select the best thoughts and discuss them on the next episode. Please also subscribe on all of the main podcasting apps or services: iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify. Basically, if you search for TF1, you'll find it somewhere. As always, it's been a privilege to talk to you all. Bye.